Hi everyone and welcome to another video. I hope you liked last week's videos. Today's video is a little bit more storybook-esque, sort of. I actually did all the coloring for both the background and the character so that they kind of would fit together perfectly. We're going to start with the character today, and as usual, if you want to see all of the coloring, including the background, in real time, there is a video. It will be linked in the description down below, up in the right corner and over on my blog. I will also, it's kind of commentated and everything. It's like 1 hour long, so yeah, but I hope you like it. So with this, I'm starting off coloring the character, and I'm starting off with the normal skin colors that I usually use. I'm using the E04 as my darkest, the E11 as my next to darkest, my E21 is my absolute mid-tone, I have an E00 as my next to lightest, and my lightest is a E50. The E50 gives him a little bit more of a yellowish tone, which I really like in my highlights. The nose here is kind of a cool thing to look at because it's a little triangular shape, which makes it really cute and really pop in his face. So for the cheeks, I'm using some R30 for the pinks. I'm also adding some like on the top of his fingers, on his ears, on his tip of the nose, because those are places that we usually have a kind of a scattered red tone, and I wanted to add that to him. For most of this character, I'm going to use my E44s, which is my absolute favorite brown. I could color with that color all day. That color is a very very natural brown. It doesn't really have that much blues or that much reds in it. It's just kind of this base brown, almost towards a little grayer tone, and I really like it. I love using it, and it does help to kind of bring in that story-esque feeling of the character that I really want to get out. I'm using those colors for the eyes, using the E49 and E47 as the darkest tone, while for the hair I want to go for kind of a lighter brown, so I start with the E44 and then work my up to the E41, which is my last color. I'm not perfect coloring in the hair because I want that stranded kind of effect. Then I'm going in for his shirt, and I decided, well, he's going to have brown and gray stripes on his shirt, so I started again with the same color, starting with the E47 this time, to get a little bit of a darker tone than the hair, and therefore giving a little bit of difference and a little bit of interest, but still keeping very much in the same color scheme. And then I'm going in with my tea toner grays because I felt that they were working very good together with the rest of the browns. I didn't want to use the warm browns, warm grays, because they were a little bit too brown, but the toner worked perfectly in this because it still have a little bit of that warmness in it. And then I'm coloring up my little green lizard here. I'm giving the lizard the same treatment with the pen as I did the dragon in the video the other week, and then I'm adding some details for his eyes and for the eye of the little lizard. For the eyes, I'm adding those little streaks that you can see in the eyes, and to tone them down, I'm just going over with the cream color and the nougat color, just to kind of blend them out a little so that they are not as stark details. And I finished off by going in with the nougat color and actually just enhancing the deepest depth on the hair. I'm not adding a lot of color there, I'm just adding a little bit to give it that standing out, just the tiniest of standing out. Then I'm going in and I'm doing some cutting, and believe it or not, this cutting is actually sped up to, I think, 3 times the speed. So I'm going super slow when I cut, not in the nearest of this speed. And the reason why I go super slow is because then I can be very, very accurate with my cutting. I also, as you can see, move the paper and not so much the scissors. Sometimes the scissors get to move a little bit, but I'm mostly moving the paper. And this also helps to give me that extra control over the paper and the scissors. I'm using a EK Success Cutter Bee scissors because they have super thin blades. These are the non-coated ones, and I usually just use them for cutting paper. Sometimes a tape piece or so comes in through, but then I can just clean them with some alcohol and they are fit for fight again. So yeah. To finish him off, I'm using a Martha Stewart craft knife. I'm cutting out the teeniest, tiniest little things. I think this adds a lot to the characters. So try to keep the same width of whiteness also in those little holes that I'm cutting out. I'm also going in and doing those little extra kind of edges that I couldn't do with a scissor to get a more of a alive image. So I started here. I actually started sketching with a lead pen because I didn't really know where to go, but it is a stone wall with a wooden kind of door. It's probably got a good name, but it's starting to get a little bit late here, so sorry if I didn't remember that. Gate, maybe. A gate. That's the word. Look. And I'm starting off, I sketched it with my lead pen. I am then going in with a micron pen. This is a brown micron pen. And the reason why I use a micron pen is because I am going to watercolor, and a micro pen is actually water fast. A good thing to think about though is that you want the micron pen to dry a little bit before you go over with water, because if you don't, it will bleed. I tried that on a separate piece of paper to just make sure that it was water fast. So I first did just a quick little doodle and ran some water over it, and it kind of ran everywhere. And then I did a little doodle. I waited for just a couple of minutes for it to dry into the paper, and then it didn't run at all. I'm choosing to go with a kind of cocoa brown color because I want it to be a little bit softer than the character design. The character is printed in black, so I wanted it to be a little bit softer so that you can see it as a background, and so the character stands out a little bit more. I really wanted to have a gray that had a similar tone to the lead that I'm been writing with, but I didn't have one in my stash. I don't know if the micron do have a gray in that tone, but I am planning to look for one because this was a lot of fun, and I hopefully I will be doing more backgrounds like this because I had so much fun kind of coming up with a concept. I knew I needed my character to sit on something, so I first did a very quick look in through the Make It Crafty store, and I wanted to have then I was looking for like a wharf bridge. I looked for the word of this, and I do not know what you would call it. I looked at Google Translate, but you know, down by the water that you can kind of park your boat at, a pier maybe, but kind of the smaller one, just like a little bit of a wooden thing. But yeah, something like that I was looking for. I couldn't find anything, probably because I was probably looking for the wrong name of things. However, I decided then that I would go for a wall, and I think Make It Crafty do have a wall, but then I already had the concept in my head. Oh, I'm gonna watercolor it, and my printer doesn't take this thickness of paper, so I instead made my own. I am using a very small set of Winsor Newton Cotman watercolors. So they are the kind of student grade watercolors. Winsor Newton has two. They have the designer watercolors, and then they have the Cotmans, which are much more affordable. And I have this little set which is like 12 different pans of color. Doesn't have a brown, doesn't have a kind of gray. It has 2 blues, 2 greens, an orange and a yellow. And a couple of browns. So what I did here is I have mixed my own kind of brown tone, and I did that by taking the darker brown together with the kind of beige brown color, and then I added a little bit of a purple-ish. I took a blue tone and I mixed it with a reddish orange. Orange and blue are complementary colors, so when you mix them together you will kind of get a bluish, brownish, grayish, kind of blackish. But because I'm using a lot of water, because these are watercolors, I'm using a lot of water because I don't want them to be too opaque. It actually turns out to be this really nice, very grey purple, which I just fell in love with. And by mixing it into the browns that I'm using in the stones, I'm kind of transferring the whole color scheme to have that color. And I actually end up mixing all my colors with a little bit of a tint of this kind of bluish, purplish grey, because then I really get a solid color story. I'm also, like you saw there, I dabbed away a little bit of the color. Really doesn't matter because I'm gonna add some more detail after that. I did go over these little things with an extra layer of blue, which you can't see because apparently I ran out of space in my memory card and I didn't realize it until the camera said click. So it turns off and then it waits a couple of time until it decides that, well, I've been off, so now I'm gonna close down the screen, and that is when it says click. So I lost a little bit of process there, but not that much. I'm going in with a darker brown. Again, it has a little bit of that purplish, but it is mostly just the darker brown in the kit. And I will link the kit in the description down below and on my blog, so you know what I've been using. And then I'm using a darker brown to kind of add a little bit of details to that back. Then I'm going to go in and do my background, and I'm letting things dry pretty quick because it's really warm outside. But also I did step away from this a couple of times, like grabbing water, having lunch, stuff like that. Just taking it slowly. As you see, I'm not really bothering about carrying coloring outside. This is watercolors. You can use just water and dry it off afterwards. So I do have a little bit of blue on my pad. I think I didn't dry it off though. I'm using a much bigger brush, and I think I should have used even bigger brush with a lot more water to make this more of a solid background. But I'm going from side to side because that is how clouds go, and that will give you kind of more of a cloudy thing. Well, for the last background here, yeah, I'm going in, I'm kind of looking, does this look good? How do I want to do? Do I need more background? Well, I decided, well, I want to have some kind of stones in there. First, I'm going in and adding a little bit more details with a very thin brush, just to give that wood a little bit more texture. And then I'm going in with a brown, or with that purplish blue, and just darkening it, but I felt it was a little bit too little, so I'm making all of, after it dried, I'm making all of these little stones, and then I get just like, no, I don't want that stone, but it had dried a little bit, and then I'm blotting it off, and I get the texture of the stones without having stones there. So yeah, I kind of liked it. I kind of liked the effect, and like, yeah, this is how I'm gonna have it. Then I'm adding a couple of different blues and greens and a little bit of that orangey red to get a foresty green, which I really liked. I'm kind of putting some color onto that little piece of cardstock at the end just to see how the colors look, and when I kind of finished it, I like, yeah, this is how I want my forest to be, because I didn't want more details in this. I'm gonna have a chipboard piece also by Make It Crafty for my sentiment, and I wanted it to match perfectly with the rest of the backing. So first I'm going in with the same brown as in my stones, and it went way too light, and I'm like, no, this is not working. So I went in with a darker version on top because I wanted to have a little bit more contrast towards the background so that the sentiment would stand out a little bit. Usually I would use some glossy accents or similar to make it stand out even more, but with this kind of story-esque feeling, I just wanted it to be matte because I wanted it to be like a storybook. Sometimes I'm just like, yeah, I want everything to be light and flowy and everything. So that was what I went to. I added a lot of tape on the back side of that paper so that it sticks down perfectly to the card base, which is a piece of Nina Solar weight, 80 pound. It's a letter size that I cut in half and then scored that piece in half. So it's A2 card base. The piece of watercolor cardstock is Canson MONTVAL cardstock, and that is also cut to 5.5 by 4.25. I'm using some multimedia matte for my glue to glue down the sentiment, and I finished off by adding a big acrylic block on top of it, so that it kind of weighs down while it's drying. It dries pretty fast, and I needed some time to cut all the little teeny tiny pieces of this foam tape. And don't worry, I have more in my cupboards. I have ordered one more, but I really love using foam tape, this kind of foam tape, because it's so thin. It doesn't add too much bulk, and it's very easy to put it in the mail. Adding multiple layers will make it be wider. Here in Sweden we pay per gram, and adding layers to a card doesn't really add anything to it. And we doesn't pay per gram, we pay for everything under 50 grams and then everything under 100 grams and so on. So you can carry quite a lot in an envelope. But yeah, that was the card for today. I hope you liked it. If you do, please thumbs it up. It means a lot to me. If you have any questions, just comment down below. Down below you find all the details and everything, and the link to my blog where you find some more close-ups of the character and the sentiment, everything. If you like it so much that you want to share it with your friends, that would make me really, really happy. And thank you again for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye!